Hello, my name is John Burris. Thank you for joining me today for this short video called Expansive Movement. In this little movie, I would say, I'll be explaining to you how important movement is in our life, and the right kind of movement is even more important. Most of us believe that we need to keep moving through our life to have a better, healthier, happier aging, yet most people do the wrong kinds of movements. We're taught by perhaps the wrong people that doing what we're doing isn't working. And so I'll share with you some ideas that might guide you down the road and basically how to move better in your life and how important movement is to our whole body and our livelihood. This video is a part of a series from a book I wrote called Return to Nature, the 5 Pillars of Healing. And this is pillar number 3, expansive movement, and how it's quite different than most people's movement called contractive movement. So we'll be exploring expansive movement from the 5 Pillars of Healing by myself, John Burris. And here's a picture of the book, Return to Nature by myself, John Burris, available at my website or Amazon or Barnes & Noble. So you can pick it up if you want to learn about the 5 Pillars of Healing based on my approach. So here's the handout here of expansive movement, pillar number 3, Return to Nature by John Burris. So to begin with, I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of movement. You know, for thousands and thousands of years, we moved our bodies to survive. We hunted, we fished, we climbed trees, we were nomads, we moved from place to place, we built our own homes, mostly with our hands, and we moved our bodies to survive. We were every day out in the fields or out hunting or trying to survive from natural elements, so our bodies were used to survive. So what happened was exercise came along, pretty recently, and exercise became artificial movement, mostly because we're not moving anymore. So if we were moving every day, we might not need exercise. In fact, most people who are out in, third world countries or whatnot, they don't exercise because they're out every day walking to work, or they have a manual labor job or whatnot. So exercise is artificial movement. And unfortunately, most of that artificial movement is contractive movement, which is doing more harm than good. Also, around 2,000 years ago, our movements really changed significantly as well. So for example, around 2,000 years ago began the first Olympics in Athens, Greece, where city-states who were at war with each other almost always would stop for 2 months or so and would have mock combat, or what's called sport. They would not try to necessarily kill each other. There was a symbolic death called competition, where wrestling and archery and running races were trying to eliminate the enemy, but instead of cutting off the enemy's head, you got a trophy or you were awarded some reward. And that began the beginning of sport. So essentially, sport is the same as war. It has roots in war. In fact, the word warrior is an athlete. An athlete is a warrior. Well, the suffix of warrior is war. So when you're practicing sport, you're essentially at war with yourself and others. You're trying to defeat, to conquer, to destroy, knock somebody down, hurt somebody. And so we develop bodies that are warriors. We call them athletes, whether it be a weekend athlete, a high school athlete, a professional athlete. But a warrior as an athlete is somebody who's practicing war. And that's how we're taught to use our bodies these days, as a war state. So as the Olympics kept developing, we developed more sports. We developed tennis and basketball and football and soccer and on and on and on. But the root is the same. When you're trying to conquer somebody, we call it competition, you have to harden your body to prepare for battle. So in essence, you're battling using your body as a weapon. Your heart's a weapon, your muscles are a weapon. You're trying to destroy somebody with your body. So most of the movement in our culture today is based on war. And so that's what we end up with. And it's interesting to note, why is there so much war in the world? Because we treat our bodies with war. So we create more war on the outside because our insides are filled with war. Yeah, we tone it down. We say, oh, it's healthy competition. I mean, look at the language of war. If a volleyball player is spiking a ball, it's called a kill. A baseball pitcher with a strong arm has a gun for an arm or a cannon. Somebody lifting weights all the time has giant biceps. Look at the guns on that guy. So the language of sport, the language of fitness, is the language of war. It's the same thing. We put our bodies in a war state. So the whole history of sport and fitness is based in war. And so we end up with worn out bodies because we're in a war state when we practice competitive, contractive exercises. It's not just the physical body, but it's our mind as well. We're trying to conquer, to destroy, to defeat. You look at the language again. We march up the field. We defend our territory. We want to annihilate the enemy. That's all war, and it's all stuck in our bodies because that's how we're exercising and moving our bodies when we're practicing contractive movements. Here's a classic example of is it true or not. In 1846, Dr. Semmelweis told medical doctors if you just washed your hands, you wouldn't kill all your patients. Up until that time, they didn't know about germs and whatnot because they couldn't see them. So they would touch one patient and look at their wounds and then go to the next patient and on and on and on and couldn't realize, wow, why are all my patients dying? Because they were spreading germs. Well, Dr. Semmelweis came along and said, if you just washed your hands with soap and hot water before you touched the next patient, you wouldn't kill all your patients. Yet, for 20 years, those doctors didn't believe him because they had this belief system, he's crazy. Well, that's the same thing we're doing right now with the muscle culture. We still believe that hard, tight bodies are the truth. And I'm here to say, I don't believe so. So, I don't necessarily believe that we have to stop lifting weights altogether, but I don't believe it should be the entire program you're involved in. After all, most people, if they go to the gym seriously, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they lift weights for their upper body. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, they lift weights for their lower body. And that's all they do. And they end up stiff, hard, and dried out, and they're decaying. So if I had to give it a number, I would say 25% of your exercise should be strength training, which means what's left, the 75% left, is more stretching, more flexibility work, more yoga, especially as you get older. I see so many older people in the gym lifting weights and whatnot over and over again. And all they see is hardness. In fact, it's crazy. I see a lot of older people, they got a frozen shoulder. First thing they do in the morning, they get their weights up and lift their little hand weights, and their shoulders are already frozen and glued together. Their fascia is fused together, yet they're told, hey, keep building strength. Even though they're already fused together, they're already glued together because of their hardness, and they keep doing more exercises of strength training to glue themselves together even more. That's called contractive craziness. So that's what most people do. So that's not working, in my opinion. So a little bit about my background. The first 35 years of my life, I was in the competitive sports world. I played football, basketball, baseball, tennis, racquetball, cycling, swimming, all of it. Running, aerobics and whatnot. And my body was beat up. I could barely walk. I had back problems and neck problems and pinched nerves and shin problems and everything. And it didn't fix any of my problems. And then about age 35, I joined the yoga community and started a serious yoga practice, and it changed my life. First of all, I was able to repair a lot of my old injuries that never went away, and I felt better, healthier. My back problems went away, my sciatica went away. I felt limber. People would even say to me, wow, were you a gymnast when you grew up? I go, no, I was a football player and a weightlifter, but I worked at it for 30 years. So expansive movement is such a better way to live. In fact, if you look at a lot of my philosophy is look at nature. Most of the exercises that were created today were created in a laboratory by scientists, the weightlifting, the machines, and all the strength training and the numbers crunching and all the data collecting. Well, the natural way to move is look at animals. Look at how much animals are stretching all the time. Cats, dogs, other animals, they're stretching all the time. And we don't think that's good for us for some reason. I guarantee I get all my strength work from yoga. I don't have to go to the gym and lift weights. I'm probably stronger now than I have ever been. But we're measuring, our measuring stick is, well, how much can you bench press? That's how good a person you are. And no one ever asked me, well, how flexible are your hamstrings? Or how loose is your back? Or can you bend over and touch your toes? No one cares because they want to know how much you can bench press. So contractive movements are based on kind of an ill-fated idea of crunching numbers and the scientification of our exercise routines. And they're not serving us in the long term. But no one wants to wake up and see it's not working. So we got to look back into how we started and shift into a new paradigm. So that's why I'm introducing expansive movements to you, because if you practice expansive movements, you can still get your strength workout. You can still do your cardio if you need to. Certain types of yoga have cardio workouts. But you'll be in a better place because you'll be exploring the body. You won't be deadening the body. You'll be opening up old pathways that are hardened and frozen. And you'll have a much richer life as you age. So one thing that's hard for you to watch is I hear so many people, especially older people, say, well, my doctor says I need to keep moving. That's a great idea on paper. However, most people are doing the wrong kinds of movements, making things worse. For example, I'll watch golfers, they'll rent a golf cart, and they don't even bring their clubs from the car to the cart. They drive the golf cart back to the parking lot to pick up their clubs because they don't want to carry their clubs. I'll see them, they'll go out and play golf and they'll park the golf cart on the grass and then walk 2 feet, hit the ball, get back in the golf cart and tell their doctor, yeah, I play golf 3 times a week. You're not doing anything, nothing. Or I watch people play pickleball. Most people play pickleball as doubles, which means the court's fairly small, and for 2 people you cover it pretty quickly. That also means you don't move very much. So I see people playing pickleball, moving 2 feet to the left and 2 feet to the right. And sometimes they've got a cocktail in one hand and a racket in the other hand. They tell their doctor, yeah, I play pickleball 3 days a week. Look how much I'm moving. You're not doing much. So, and also people say, well, I walk an hour every day. Well, most people don't know how to walk. They limp, or they drag their feet, or drag a hip, or their shoulders don't move, their arms don't move, their hips don't move. It's like driving your car with a flat tire. You're making it worse because you don't know how to walk and you haven't corrected your injuries. So you're dragging your body and you're wearing it out because most people never learn how to walk correctly and they have old injuries that never got taken care of. So they're wearing their bodies down just by walking. So now I want to introduce you to the solution. Solution is expansive movements. With expansive movements, you're softening the fascia which wraps around the muscles so it's not hardening and drying out. You can still create strength and tone in your body if you do the right kinds of expansive movements. You're not going to be flabby and soft as you think you're going to be. Your organs aren't going to fall out of your gut as you're told. But expansive movements are more dynamic in the body and they'll keep your body alive and vibrant much longer. And this is what I prefer, knowing that I've been in both worlds. I lived the first half of my life in the contractive, hard warrior body, and it killed me. Literally, I would crawl into the emergency rooms looking for pain pills because my back hurt so much and my sciatica was killing me. The last 30 years or so in the expansive movement practice with yoga and other things has done dramatic things to my body, and it's opened things up dramatically. So this is some of the things I'm going to suggest that we all start doing. Partly is our fascia. We're built like a tree. So I'll show you tree rings. We're not much different than this tree. You see all the rings layer by layer by layer. Our bodies are nothing but layers and tubes. I have a wonderful video if you haven't watched it yet. So that would give you more in-depth knowledge of the topic. When you practice contractive movements, all those layers glue together. Your fascia, which is the wrapping around the muscle tissue, fuses together and hardens and dries out like a dried old tree trunk. When you practice expansive movements, you start to loosen each layer. So you get length and space between your layers and you get more openness and vitality and circulation. So that's a major difference in contractive movements versus expansive movements. Here's a picture of a very, very old book that's all fused together and dried out. When you practice contractive movements over and over again, this is what happens to your body. Your tissues fuse together and dry out. The fascia around the muscles dries out and becomes like super dry and fused together, and it loses vitality and life. And this is the warrior body right here. And once again, remember that athletes are warriors. The root of warrior is war. When you're practicing contractive movements, you're in a state of war. You are hardening, tightening, and that's before you get any injury. You're contracting and gluing yourself together because you're in a state of war. And here's a depiction of the ancient gladiators fighting and killing each other in the Colosseum of Rome. People sat back and thumbs up or thumbs down whether they should live or die. We watched the bloodshed and all the glory. And warrior activities called sport became entertainment. And that became normal. Unfortunately, things haven't changed at all. We still do the same thing, whether it be mixed martial arts, kickboxing, boxing, football, basketball, baseball. While you're practicing sport and fitness, you're still in war. And we cheer around the warriors. We bet on it. We spend holidays. The Super Bowl is the national holiday. We watch people destroy each other because we've gotten used to using our bodies to destroy people, called war. And so that's what happens. And those warriors, once they get injured or can't perform anymore, guess what we do? We throw them away and we find somebody else to replace them. That's what we do, and that's the culture we're living in because we live in a world of contractive movements. So let me share with you some ideas of what expansive movements would be. We'll first talk about dance, and I'm not talking about ballroom dancing or structured dance. I'm talking about free-form dancing. Put some music on in your house or your office and move your body. Feel the rhythm of the beat. Move this way and that. Get your vibe on, get your groove on. Allow your body to expand and move and freely move in all different directions. That's what a beginning process would look like. The next process is called Feldenkrais, and I'll share you a little bit about that. This is one of the things that might rehab some of those injuries you might have. Feldenkrais was developed by Moshe Feldenkrais many, many years ago, and it's a movement re-education system. Often when we have injuries, the muscles and the fascia carry memories with them. They forget to let go. For example, if you're in a car accident and you have a whiplash, your neck muscles stay frozen and your fascia will glue together around them so you can't move your head for the next 50 years. So with the Feldenkrais approach, let me show you what it might look like. You might move your arm up here, move it in and out, and then move your head sideways. And you're starting to re-educate muscles and fascia that have an old memory that just won't let go. So I really love this system because it helps re-educate old patterns. It's part of the expansive movement system, and it frees up just old achy places that don't know how to let go. So it's a lot of it is just re-education for the tissues. And so I prefer this method than, for example, the classic sports therapy model is to build muscle on top of an injury. I don't believe that works at all. This actually gets to the root of where people's injuries are, starts to re-educate why it's tight and why it will not let go. So I highly recommend Feldenkrais. And I really love the system created by Miranda Esmonte White called Essentrics. In this system, she teaches you how to move freely with free form and open up old pathways of holding that aren't so rigid and contractive. So for instance, in the eccentric system, you might take your arm and you just go back and forth or swing it around and feel a full range of motion and go back and forth. So it's movement, but it's slow movement, it's focused movement, it's attempting to create full range of motion. So as most people age, they lose their range of motion because they're contracting either through old injuries or through weight training or whatnot. So in the eccentric system, it teaches you to keep your joints fluid and open by expansive movement. So I'm very much a fan of the eccentric system. And the last part is yoga. I seriously got into the yoga world many years ago. I became a yoga teacher. I've taken hundreds of yoga classes. I've given thousands of yoga classes. I've taken people on retreats all over the world. I swear by it. It's a magical system. Energetically, emotionally, physically, you feel so much more alive doing yoga and so much more alive in your body experience and whatnot. I mean, unfortunately, the last few years, the fitness world has kind of hijacked the yoga experience, made it their own. And so you see a lot of fitness yoga, which really isn't yoga. You've lost a lot of the core principles of yoga and whatnot. You'll see a lot of things happening that aren't really yoga at all. So, but there's many types of yoga, from very fast to very slow, for beginners, for intermediates, for advanced. So what it's doing, it's creating, first of all, it's creating a parasympathetic response where your body goes into relaxation. A lot of it because of how we're taught to breathe through our nose, through poses and whatnot. And so you relieve much more in a relaxation response, where if you came out of a fitness class, you're more in a sympathetic response, which means your nervous system is on high alert. You're stressed out, in other words. Yoga is also lengthening your tissues, your muscles, your fascia are getting length and space. You're not compressing and contracting. You're opening, you're expanding, so your hips are moving, your feet are moving, your shoulders are moving. You're in a more energized body, more circulation, more energy, more chi runs through the fascia tissues. So I'm a strong proponent of yoga, but you can't just do it once a month. You can't just go, well, I went on vacation and did yoga at the spa. Well, that's not going to work. It has to be regular and consistent. I recommend any time from 3 to 5 times a week. It would be a great thing. You don't have to do 3 hours with it. You can do a half hour a day, but you got to keep your fascia liquid and expansive and opening. So in my experience, yoga is one of the best, very best systems that will help us embody these bodies, because what we've been taught for the last couple thousand years isn't working. And so yoga is a gift to us to expand, to become healthy in our bodies, and to be pain-free. There's a real big difference between a yoga teacher who's been teaching for 50 years and somebody who's been lifting weights for 50 years. They're really different. And when I get people on my massage table, bodywork table, work on them, I would much prefer working on the long-term yoga teacher than the person lifting weights for 50 years, because their body is hard, tight, dried out, and rigid. And it's kind of like beef jerky. And so there's quite a distinction, because one is practicing contractive movements and one is practicing expansive movements. And it makes a huge difference in one's life. So here's another thing to consider. How do I incorporate this in my life? Well, I don't want to give up the gym. I don't want to give up my contractive movements. So I have an expression. It's not mine. I borrow it from somebody else. It's called balance or harmony. So most people were taught balance. And I have clients and students who go, well, I go to the gym 4 days a week and I do yoga once and I'm balanced. I go, well, how come you're never changing? Your body's still hard and tight. It's like waking up in the morning and having a green smoothie but having a 6-pack of beer for lunch. You're not doing much and you're doing mostly the wrong things, and it's not going to work. So harmony means more of a lifestyle choice. So I prefer mostly doing expansive movements and occasionally doing contractive movements like weightlifting or gym work or whatever that push-ups might be. But the majority of what I prefer is expansive movements, because it's a direction that I'm moving into. So you want to think about harmony rather than balance. So what I've seen over the years is people who just practice contractive movements, they stay in a war state. Their bodies get hard and tight and rigid and dried out. But we're taught that's normal. The media, the government policies, the training we're giving, medical doctors keep teaching this philosophy. Harden your body, build more muscle. And I'm saying, it's not working. If I've observed this as a body worker and yoga teacher for 40 years, it doesn't work, but we keep doing it. So I'm suggesting we may shift to an expansive movement system. I would love for children and young adults to start doing yoga in elementary school and high school and college rather than all the other stuff they're doing, because as they age, they're going to be healthier. You know, I left high school crippled playing from the sports I played, and so it took me decades to recover from that. I'm not alone. So I would prefer to see things like yoga and Feldenkrais and Essentrics taught early on, and we'd be in different bodies. We'd have a different culture. So to sum it all up, in my experience, I've done both. I've done contractive movements and expansive movements, and I would definitely prefer the expansive movements as I feel better in my body and I age better. I have no pain anywhere and whatnot. I've pretty much worked through most of my old injuries. I would love to see culture make that shift too, but it's a lot of momentum moving the other direction, and we'll see how it all goes. So thank you for watching this short video on expansive movement. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I love talking about it. If you'd like to know more about me, please visit my website at johnburris.com, and please subscribe to my channel for more leading edge information to come. Thank you.